Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another of our ForeFlight seminars. Today's session is scheduled to last about 45 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, and that'll leave me about 15 or 20 minutes at the end for some general questions, maybe demonstrate some features, anything like that. If you have any questions during the main portion of this webinar, please use the Q&A button you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen. If you have a question that we don't get to in this allotted time, please feel free to reach out to us at team@foreflight.com with any additional questions you may have. So today's scope is to walk users through how to set up an aircraft using either a pre-built weight and balance template or creating a custom template from scratch. And we'll talk about how to use the weight and balance tools in flight planning as well. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and begin. My name is Jeremy Lippart. I am a member of the customer education team here at ForeFlight. And like I mentioned just a moment ago, we do have several team members on the call as well. They'll be manning the Q&A. So if you ask any questions in the Q&A tool, they'll be the ones responding to you. So my agenda for today, we're setting up a weight and balance profile in ForeFlight. This will cover setting up weight and balance profile using both pre-built templates and custom templates. So making your own from scratch, your own weight and balance profile. We'll talk about planning a flight in ForeFlight Mobile using our weight and balance features. And then at the very end, I'm going to preview our new graphical weight and balance features. This is available for Performance Plus subscribers, and it came out towards the end of 2024. So with that said, the basic idea of what we are aiming to do in this webinar is to get you from this. So we want you to take full advantage of ForeFlight's weight and balance tools. And in doing so, make it easier to plan and ultimately safer to ensure you're planning your weight and balance for every flight. So again, we'd like to take you from doing this the traditional, I don't want to say the old-fashioned, but the traditional way, using load graphs, weight and balance problem sheets, to this. This would be our hope is that by the end of this, you are comfortable doing all your weight and balance calculations in ForeFlight Mobile. So most of this webinar I'll be spending on ForeFlight Mobile for setting up my weight and balance profiles. This can be done, it's a nearly identical workflow if you're using the web. So for those of you who use plan.foreflight.com, the workflow I'll show on mobile is almost identical to that on the web. This may in fact be easier if you're setting up profiles for multiple aircraft. This is what we're looking at right now is plan.foreflight.com. My screen probably looks different than yours. I have access to several business and add-on features that you most likely don't have access to. But the tabs you'll be interacting with on plan.foreflight.com are available to all users. So if you would like to do the weight and balance setup that I will explain how to do on mobile, if you would like to do that on the web, you can do so via the aircraft tab, and that's what we're looking at here. I do want to start with just a real quick discussion of the resources that are available to you. All of the information, all of the workflows that I'll be covering, these can all be found in the ForeFlight Weight and Balance Guide. All of you have access to this. If you are signed into ForeFlight Mobile, tap on the Documents tab, scroll down till you find the ForeFlight Drive, and you'll see all of our user guides. So you'll notice there are several ones here. The one I'm looking at, the one I'm concerned with right now, is my ForeFlight Weight and Balance Guide. The green check mark lets me know that this is downloaded. So if you've never taken a look at the ForeFlight Drive and the Documents tab, there's several user guides here that can help you with some of the specific features in the app. Once you've opened it, once you've downloaded it once, anytime it's updated, ForeFlight will automatically download those updates for you too. So we're going to start with using pre-built weight and balance profiles. I'm going to start my setup in the aircraft tab. So typically when I log in, I'm almost always on the maps tab last. So my app has opened up in the maps tab. I'll go to the aircraft tab first. And this is where we'll start our weight and balance configuration and look at all of our information. On the aircraft tab, we can see all of the aircraft we have set up in our account. I'm going to assume that most of you have fewer aircraft than I have displayed. A lot of these are for demonstration purposes in order to walk through the various features for various types of aircraft. So for this first part of the webinar, we're going to be using a weight and balance profile that's been pre-made by ForeFlight. And I'm going to start by selecting my Skyhawk. That's in the top of my list here. That's Foxtrot 172. So I'll go ahead and I'll select my Skyhawk. I'm going to assume that I've already set up my aircraft performance information, equipment, tail number, all of that. I'm going to assume I've done all my configuration except for my weight and balance profile. So if you have questions related to performance profiles or aircraft category, any of that things, feel free to ask those questions, but just bear in mind this webinar is going to be about the weight and balance profiles specifically. So the simplest way to check if ForeFlight has a weight and balance profile for your aircraft is simply to, if you're entering a new aircraft, you'll do this by typing in the aircraft type, or just entering into this aircraft type field. This brings up our aircraft search menu, basically. You'll see the pop-up keypad go up here. When you're viewing or searching for an aircraft, so in my example, I've searched for C172. If you're viewing and searching for an aircraft, if you see this little flag that says weight and balance template available, that means that ForeFlight has already built the weight and balance template for that aircraft. In some cases, you won't find your exact aircraft type listed here, but for many users, not for all users, but for many users, using a pre-built profile for something similar may be a good starting point, because then we would have done a lot of the work for you. That said, building your own weight and balance templates from scratch is not overly difficult, and that's what I'll be walking through in this, let's say, the second half of this webinar. So in our example, I'll be using this build, the first build here for my aircraft. Let's say based on all of my aircraft information, this is, if not exactly identical to what I'm flying, it's very, very close. So I'll just go ahead and click on that. And I'll return to my aircraft setup page. So I'm just on the aircraft setup page. This is actually the exact same page I was looking at just a moment ago. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to find some weight and balance information. So we can see my aircraft weight summary is displayed here. This is based on the aircraft type I selected. I'm going to verify these numbers are correct, and I'm going to do that with my POH. When we're building the weight and balance profile, we'll be verifying those numbers as well. So you can, whatever order you want to do this in, you can verify all of these before building the profile. You can verify them as you're building the profile. Just make sure those are all correct. Again, those are the numbers that ForeFlight is pulling from the manufacturer's information based on the selected aircraft type. I'm going to proceed to start by tapping on Add Weight and Balance Profile. And because this is a pre-built template, so that was what I meant when I said if it says weight and balance template available, this is a pre-built template. We see that in the pop-up window here. We see there are templates available. There's a 4-seat arrangement and then a blank template. The blank template is going to be available for all aircraft because you are going to create a custom template. So what I'm going to do now is just select my 4-seat arrangement. And I'm taken to the weight and balance profile page, the weight and balance template page. Because I'm using a pre-built template, most of these fields have been completed. The only information that I as a user am required to input is my basic empty CG and my basic empty weight. Although ForeFlight will suggest a basic empty weight. So again, this is from the manufacturer's information. Verify this is correct, but we will suggest to you a basic empty weight. If you want to use that suggestion when we're building this out, just tap on that suggestion. It saves half a second of time, but it does save some time. So the information, again, all I really need to enter, technically speaking, is my basic empty CG and my basic empty weight. This information should be in your POH. Technically, this should be coming from the weight and balance record or the airplane weighing form prepared by your mechanic. Most people will have this recorded in their POH. So For my examples, I'm taking these from the POH. This is where most of you will be able to find this information. So everyone's POH is slightly different. As I was preparing this, we were trying to use different aircraft, and I was pulling different POHs and things. And I found that I guess they're mostly standardized, but not all standardized. So I'm speaking in generalities that should apply to the majority of you, but if they don't, just be aware you may need to dig a little deeper into your POH. So generally, we should only need to reference Section 2, that's limitations, and Section 6, that's going to be the weight and balance to create our profile. So that's my table of contents. Again, Section 2, limitations, and Section 6 should be really the only two parts I need to reference for this. So we'll be able to find our basic empty weight and our basic empty CG. Again, this should be in Section 6. What you are looking for is the weight and balance data form. And you should find your this is our weight and balance data form we're seeing here. Again, this should have been recorded when the aircraft was weighed. This is probably handwritten in your POH. It may be appended to the POH as an additional document, but all this information should be in the same place. So specifically what we're looking for is our airplane weighing form. And once we have these values, we're just going to go ahead and tap on those fields to start entering the information. So what I'm looking for right now is my basic empty weight and my basic empty CG. Those are the pieces of information that I'm looking for. And again, this has been recorded in this section of my POH. I'll start by entering in my basic empty CG arm of 42.7 inches. And I'm trying to, as I go through this, I'll try to highlight where I pull these numbers from to make sure that you're able to follow along, at least visually, as I enter in this information. I'll continue to my basic empty weight. And like I mentioned earlier, if the basic empty weight that we suggest is the same, you can just tap on that. So we can tap on use 1727, or we can manually enter it. I will manually enter it just for the sake of demonstrating this, but it is the same weight. So again, I'm just pulling 1727 and entering 1727. And effectively, I'm done setting up this weight and balance profile. However, not all of our aircraft are standard. They don't all match 100% what's in the pre-built profile that ForeFlight has built. So I do want to verify all of my stations and all of my CG limits. Currently, we can see that our pre-built template includes 5 stations, front seats, rear seats, 2 baggage compartments, and fuel tanks. So all I'm doing for this pre-built template is verifying ForeFlight's information against the POH. And if there is a difference, making those changes. So this should all be found in Section 6 also. In this case, I'm looking at the loading arrangements for this aircraft, and we can see those are the stations. The names might differ slightly. So you'll notice for the first station on my POH, it's just listed as pilot and passenger. And on ForeFlight, it's listed as front seats. Rear seats are listed as rear passenger. And then we have baggage area 1, baggage area 2 instead of tail compartment. These names are editable too. When we do the template from scratch, I'll show you how you can do that. But we found the information in our POH, and all we're doing now is just verifying that everything is correct. In this case, it looks like everything matches. If it didn't, I could just tap on one of these stations and make the necessary adjustments. And I will show you how to do that when we do the custom built one. Getting these stations is important. Getting these stations correct is important because when you're loading an aircraft with people or baggage, when ForeFlight does those weight and balance calculations, those center of gravity calculations, we're assigning those loads, that passenger weight, that baggage weight, to those positions. So once you want to make sure this is as correct as it can be so that the calculations ForeFlight does are accurate so that you're flying as safely and well-informed as possible. So I want to continue to, again, I'm just verifying that everything here is correct. I want to continue to my CG limits to finish verifying our template. And generally, these should be found in section 2 of your POH. And here are all my CG limits. You should at least 2 forward CG limits and 2 aft CG limits. Your POH will probably specify normal and utility operation categories, and it will typically show a single CG envelope, usually with one area shaded as utility. So in our example, what we're doing now is we're just verifying that these limits are correct. Depending on how you fly, you may want to make multiple profiles for utility and normal operations. I will be showing how to make multiple profiles for a single aircraft. The values shown here are based on the pre-built template. So all you're doing, again, just like with the stations, all we're doing is verifying that these limits are correct against the POH. So what we're constructing effectively is the CG envelope is going to be a polygon, and think of each limit as a point on that polygon. So that's what we're building, and that's why you basically need at least 2 forward, 2 aft, because then you can create that square shape, or it's not always a square, but you create that shape. And when we scroll down and look at the visualization of the envelope, you'll see it take shape. So in this example, we can see, based on this information, that as the aircraft becomes heavier, the center of gravity limit will shift to the rear of the aircraft. When you're flight planning, your aircraft's center of gravity, when loaded, should be within those limits to make sure you have effective control and stability during takeoff, flight, and landing. So that's what the CG envelope is designed for. So our first forward CG limit is listed at 41 inches aft of datum at 2,550 pounds. This is also our max takeoff weight. And it looks like the information in our template is correct, so I'll continue to verify. Our next listed forward CG limit is 35 inches aft of datum at 1,950 pounds or less. Our template has added a third point at 35 inches. So it's this third 35-inch point, and that represents the or less value. And for our CG, when we're producing our CG envelope, and this represents the wider variety of potential operational weights below 1,950 pounds. Practically speaking, this can represent the basic empty weight of your aircraft if you want to. That might be another way to perceive this. There is only one aft CG limit published in our POH. Note, however, that this lists the aft limit as 47.3 inches aft of datum at all weights. So for our purposes, ForeFlight has listed this as our max weight, that's 2,550 pounds, and our lower weight limit of 1,500 pounds. And again, if you make this, that lower weight limit, the basic empty weight, effectively it will be doing the same thing. You're never going to, if your aircraft weighs more than 1,500 pounds, you're obviously never flying at 1,500 pounds, but the CG envelope works the same way. To see our finished CG envelope, again, we didn't do anything. We just verified these numbers were correct. I'll scroll down a little bit more, and I can see there is my CG envelope. If you want to, you can verify that this is graphically correct. The representations graphically don't always look identical with what's printed in your POH. The numbers should be the same, though. So the actual appearance may vary, but the numbers should be the same. So each limit that we've entered is basically a point on our polygon here. So you'll notice, again, I pointed out the utility category and the normal category in the POH. Utility and normal are not found here in the ForeFlight template. You would have to make a separate template. We're looking at the normal operations. You'd have to make a separate template basically for the utility category. So each limit we entered earlier is basically just a point on our polygon. Our forward limits on the left-hand side and our aft limits on the right-hand side here. Yes, and I think I misspoke just a moment ago. I'd have to verify this. I think I said this. The template we built is the normal category. looking at it now, this might actually include both this is going to be the normal and utility combined. This is just that entirety of the center of gravity envelope. The left portion of this would be the utility category, but it's not going to be labeled that way on the CG envelope. So your aircraft's center of gravity will be represented in the CG envelope as passengers and cargo are added to the CG. The center of gravity of this aircraft will shift. This can be done during flight planning if you're a performance subscriber, or via the weight and balance tab if you are a basic or pro plus subscriber. So we're done with this weight and balance profile. So that took longer than it would actually take, so I was talking through what I was doing. But all I did was load up an aircraft type, pick a pre-built template, entered in my basic empty CG, basic empty weight, and then verified the pre-completed values against my POH. This aircraft doesn't have any retractable gear, so I can ignore the gear retraction moment change. And the percent MAC, this is typically only used with swept-wing aircraft. If it's applicable, you should, again, find that necessary information in the POH, and the necessary information will be the LEMAC, the leading edge of the mean aerodynamic chord, and the mean aerodynamic chord. That should all be found in the in the POH. So we've completed going through how to set up a pre-built weight and balance profile in ForeFlight, and now we'll move on to creating a custom, basically from scratch, weight and balance profile. And that will also include looking into how to create multiple profiles if needed for a single aircraft. So if you're doing, if your aircraft loadout changes significantly based on your operation or seasonally, you may want to create multiple profiles to make flight planning a little easier. So we'll look into creating a weight and balance profile. If we need to build a custom weight and balance profile, the workflow is fairly similar to what we just did. In this example, I'm going to pretend I don't have a pre-built profile for my Archer 2. I believe there are actually several pre-built profiles for the Archer, but for the sake of the webinar, I'm going to imagine as if there's not. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on my aircraft. The same aircraft information window I looked at earlier appears here. I'm going to assume again that I've already set up my performance profiles. I've already set up my aircraft type. All I'm concerned with right now is my weight and balance profile. So I'll go ahead and scroll down. Just like before, I can see a summary of my aircraft weights are pre-populated. Again, this was done based on my selection of aircraft type. Please verify that these are correct in your POH, either in the limitations or in the weight and balance section. Despite this summary being created, there is no profile for this aircraft. I'm going to have to build one from scratch. So I can do that by tapping on the Add Weight and Balance Profile. And I can build multiple weight and balance profiles if I'll be changing the setup of my aircraft for different operations. Just like before, just like before, I still need to manually enter in our basic empty CG and confirm our basic empty weight. You'll notice right now the default name here is just my profile. So you may want to give that a different name, maybe 4 seats, custom arrangement, something like that, just to make sure if you are creating multiple profiles, you can keep track of them easily. So we are going to have to enter in our basic empty CG and our basic empty weight. What we didn't have to do before, we will have to do now, is manually enter in our stations and our forward and aft CG limits. So the only difference between building a custom template and using a pre-built template is in the pre-built template, we verified the information was correct. In the custom template, we're going to enter the information from scratch. So I'll pull up our POH for this aircraft, and I'll work from top to bottom, first finding our aircraft weight information. And I can see my aircraft weight information. Again, this could be a number of different places in your POH. This could be in the weight and balance data form. It could be appended to your POH when the mechanic weighed the aircraft. It should be in section 6, however, but if it's not, you may have to look elsewhere. So I found my weight and balance data form that I'll use to build this profile. I'll start with my basic empty CG. And note that in this example, we have a standard empty weight, is the first line here, reads standard empty weight. We have optional equipment and then a basic empty weight. We could use that last basic empty weight line to complete our information here. We could do that. But if this optional equipment is something that would be removed for a different, again, maybe seasonally or different mission types, you may want to enter that in as part of the aircraft's operating weight, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate here, is I'm going to use that optional equipment as part of demonstrating changing the basic operating weight of the aircraft, not just the basic empty weight. I'm going to start by just filling out these fields. I'll tap on my basic empty CG. I'll enter in the value that's in my POH. That's 87.9984 inches. You'll see that ForeFlight does round that up. Now I'll enter in my basic empty weight. Note that ForeFlight is asking me, or not asking me, I guess. They're displaying a basic empty weight that does not match my basic empty weight. So I don't want to use the suggestion from ForeFlight here. I want to enter this manually. So I'll go ahead and open up my field. And the value I'm going to use is my standard empty weight here in my POH. That's 1,691.2 pounds. Once I enter that in, that will be listed as my basic empty weight. I do have that optional equipment that, based on the POH for this aircraft, is part of the operating weight of that aircraft. So I want to add this in and make sure it's counted as the operating weight for this aircraft. So to do that, I'm going to add a station. And adding a station is any time I want to add another row of seats, anything that's permanently in the aircraft. I can do this by adding a station. So I'll go ahead and I'll tap on add station. And I'm going to add this as an aircraft item. And it's pretty vague. You can add whatever you want as an aircraft item. The actual name is less important than getting the CG and the weight limits correct. So I'll rename this station field to match my POH. That's optional equipment. And I'll start to build out that station information. You'll notice the arm is required. I'll go ahead and tap on arm. And I can see from my POH that my CG arm for the optional equipment here is 102.2918 inches. I'll go ahead and enter that. And now, because this was included in my POH as part of the basic loadout of my aircraft, I do want to include this in my basic operating weight. So that means that every time that this equipment is effectively permanent in this aircraft on this weight and balance profile. So when ForeFlight's doing the calculations, this weight of this optional item, this aircraft item, will always be added to my basic empty weight. So I'll go ahead and tap on include in basic operating weight. And because I'm including this in my basic operating weight, I have to include the weight of the equipment, the weight of the object, the weight of the station. So I'll enter in that information. Again, this is in my POH. It's 73 pounds. And I guess I didn't highlight it here, but there it is. It's 73 pounds. So I'll go ahead and add I did highlight it. I'll go ahead and add that 73 pounds, and I'll tap on the back button to return to my profile. I'll now build out my individual pilot, passenger, fuel, and cargo stations. So the default that already populated was the cockpit, one cargo station, and and fuel. I have a cockpit, and this is a four-seat aircraft, so I do have a second row of seats, so I need to build all that information in. So again, there's various places you can find this information in the POH. I use the load diagram, I believe, for the 172. I could have used that for the Archer as well, but instead I'm just using the loading form. So I'll build out those individual stations. This workflow is fairly straightforward. I'll tap on the field. I'll verify that information from my POH, and then I'll enter it. Once you go back to your aircraft configuration, you'll just repeat this for every station. So I'll repeat this for rear seats. There is no rear seat station existing right now, so I'll click on Add Station. I'll have to add this as a row of seats. I'll enter in a name, Passengers Rear Seat. I'll verify the arm for this seat, 118.1 inches. Then I'll return back to my profile. I'll do the same for my fuel tanks. For the weight limit here, I'm just using the maximum usable fuel to calculate my weight limit. So it's 48 gallons. That's what I use to come up with this value. And then I see my arm is 95 inches. I'll finalize my stations by entering in the data for my cargo station here. And that's listed as baggage on my POH. Like others, everything else, this is pulled from my POH. So my arm is 142.8 inches. The maximum load is 200 pounds. So I've just entered in all that information. So my stations are correct. I have my basic operating weight is correct. I'll go ahead and scroll down a little bit. And what I need to do now is enter in my forward and aft CG limits. These are the limits we'll use to create a CG envelope. As we enter these values, ForeFlight will be building that graphical representation. And at a minimum, you should have 2 forward and 2 aft limits, and that creates that polygonal shape for the CG envelope, for that graphical representation. So I'll start with my forward limits. This is the same I did on the pre-built template. I'm just manually doing this instead of verifying it. So I'll start with my forward limit. I'm pulling all of these directly from my POH. This is section 2, limitations. You can see my forward CG limit is 88.6 inches. The weight is 2,550 pounds. I'll continue to add my second forward limit. Again, pulling everything from my POH. And because my POH only lists those 2 limits, but the second one is described as 2,050 pounds and less, I'm going to add an additional forward CG limit, and I'll use the basic operating weight of my aircraft as the weight for that limit. And the reason is because this value here, I may operate below that value. If I'm the only one in the aircraft and I don't know, I don't have a lot of fuel or anything, maybe I'm doing some pattern work and I don't have any baggage, I may be operating below that number, the 2,050 pounds. So because of that, I want to make sure my CG envelope reflects the operating weight of the aircraft. Even though it says and less, I'm going to build my third forward CG limit at my basic operating weight. So it's the same 82 inches. I'll enter my 82 inches, but my weight value here will be 1,764 pounds to represent my basic operating weight. I'll repeat this exact same process for my aft limits. I'll tap into the field. I'll verify. I'll check my POH to add this information. I can see that I only have, just like before, and I'm looking, I am only looking at the normal category here. I have a rearward limit of 93 inches, and the weights listed are 2,550 and 2,050 and less. So I'll do that exact same thing I did for my forward limits. Building these out. And again, for the third limit, because I may operate the aircraft at less than 2,050 pounds, I'll use my basic operating weight for that third limit. Once I've completed all of my stations, all of my limits, I can scroll down a little bit and I can preview the CG envelope that was generated by ForeFlight. If my aircraft has retractable gear, I may need to enter in data for the gear retraction moment change. In this case, this aircraft does have retractable gear. Not all retractable gear aircraft will have a gear retraction moment change. In some cases, you won't find it in the POH. For most GA aircraft, the value of this moment change is mathematically quite small. For this example, I went ahead and I was able to find this, not in the POH, but I was able to find this in the type certificate. So that's the information I will enter here. Again, mathematically, this is a very small value. So if you can't find it, it shouldn't have that significant of an impact on your weight and balance envelope. Once I finish, so let's say I'm sharing, this is an aircraft I share with others, and I've taken the time to create my weight and balance profile, and I want to make sure that everyone else I'm sharing the aircraft with has access to it so they can plan completely, they can plan safely for all their flying. These can all be easily shared. You can do that just by tapping on that share icon in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll see all your options. You can email this, you can airdrop this, you can print this, you can save this to your iPad. Whatever works for you, you're able to do that. So I finished creating loading a pre-built ForeFlight weight and balance template. Then I created a weight and balance template from scratch. Now I want to look at how I can create multiple profiles for the same aircraft. So you may or may not ever need to do this, but if you're using your aircraft for a variety of different operational needs, it may be helpful to have multiple profiles. Whatever your use case is going to vary, obviously. In this case, I'm imagining that I'm going to be operating, this is the 172, the Foxtrot 172 aircraft, that I may be operating this sometimes with the rear seats removed and some sort of equipment or cargo in its position instead. So I'm just looking at the same aircraft configuration page I did at the very beginning. I've already finished setting up my 4-seat arrangement. You can see that these values are no longer blank. So I could build another profile from scratch using the methods I just showed. Or I could open up the one I just finished and I verified is correct. The reason I'm going to do that is because this might save me a little bit of time. I'll go ahead and open up that profile. I'll scroll to the very bottom of my weight and balance profile, and you'll see there's an option to copy that profile. So when you copy the profile, you don't have to recalculate all of the information. You don't have to re-verify everything. You're literally copying it. So if you're flying, if you have a fleet of aircraft that are almost all identical, it will probably save you some time to create a template, create a profile, and just copy it, and then assign it to the different tail numbers. Once you hit copy profile, you'll see a pop-up asking you to which aircraft do you want to copy this. So if, for example, I had several 172s, I might copy this to another 172. For this, though, I'm going to copy this to the exact same aircraft because I'm creating multiple profiles for this aircraft. This will load that exact same profile. What I've done, though, is I want to give it a unique name so that when I'm flight planning, I know which weight and balance profile I want to use. I can use my 4-seat profile or my rear seats removed profile. At a minimum, I need to remove my seats and then adjust the basic empty weight to reflect that change. To remove any station, we're just going to swipe from right to left. If you do it all at once, it'll just delete it. If you kind of do it halfway, you'll see a little delete button pop up. We'll go ahead and tap on delete. So those rear seats are now deleted, but I need to make some more adjustments to my profile here. So scrolling back up, my basic empty weight is now no longer accurate. So I want to make an adjustment to that field to account for the weight of the missing seats. So full disclosure, I don't know how much rear seats weigh in a C-172. So I may have overestimated a little bit, but please if you're doing something else, make sure you get those weights correct. I'm replacing those seats with some sort of equipment that I'll be operating or will need to carry with me. Maybe it's seasonal cargo or something like that. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on Add Station. The actual type you choose here is less important. Cargo or aircraft items, it's either way is fine, essentially. I'm going to complete the required fields. I'm going to use the same CG arm as my seats that have since been removed, and I will include this item, my seasonal gear, in my basic operating weight. Just like before, I'll enter this as part of my basic operating weight, so I need to give it a weight. I'll give it 75 pounds. And now I have the alternate weight and balance profile is completed and can be used for planning. That alternate profile can be found under my aircraft configuration. And if I'm a Performance Plus user and I'm planning a flight and using the weight and balance features there, I'll be able to select the alternate profile here. So we've gone through setting up pre-built profiles, building a custom profile, building multiple profiles. I now want to look at flight planning with weight and balance features in ForeFlight Mobile. I'll cover the weight and balance features available to basic and pro users. Then I'll cover the features available to Performance Plus users. So once configured, you can calculate weight and balance for a planned flight. If you're not a Performance Plus user, this functionality is not integrated directly into your flight planning. So here I've created a flight plan. I'm viewing my flight plan. This is all of the information I need to complete my weight and balance calculations. In order to do that, though, I will have to navigate over to my weight and balance tab. If you don't see it displayed in the bottom of your navigation toolbar, tap the More button. You'll find it. You'll find it there. So I want to make sure I have the correct aircraft and configuration selected before continuing. So every aircraft, every configuration will be available in that drop-down menu there. The workflow here is pretty straightforward. I want to tap on the fields to edit the loadout, and the CG envelope at right will be dynamically adjusted. And I'm not going to narrate this so much as I go through because it's all fairly self-explanatory. Tap on each field, enter in the information, and you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, this value with my landing weight and takeoff weight, all that value will change as I'm entering information. You'll notice right now my landing weight and takeoff weight are identical because I don't have any fuel burn information entered. That has to be entered manually. Once you get to this part, I find it helpful if you're calculating it this way to use both your phone and your tablet so you can accurately reference the flight plan. You can accurately reference the estimated fuel burn from that. So I've just opened up the exact same flight on my iPad. As ForeFlight users, you can use up to 3 devices on your account. So I'm using my iPad and my iPhone at the same time. And I'm using the iPhone just to reference my fuel burn information so I can accurately enter it in on the weight and balance tab here. So I'll enter in those values in my flight performance summary from my iPhone. My taxi fuel is the difference between my fuel at start minus my flight fuel and what is available on landing. So in my example here, my taxi fuel is only looks like 1 gallon here. Once I'm finished, I can see that I am within limits for this flight, and I can print and share this summary by clicking on the summary button at the top there. This loadout is not saved with any particular flight. So if you're using this, the weight and balance tab, if you're building your weight and balance calculations this way, it may be a good idea to download or print these summaries before each flight. And you can download, print, share, save, any of that using this share button in the upper right-hand corner. This can be printed and saved as a PDF. So if you are a Performance Plus user, you have some additional tools available to you in weight and balance planning. So once that profile has been created, you can incorporate that directly into flight planning. So this is a flight from Lakeland, Florida into Georgia. In order to start using those tools in flight planning, we do need to view this flight in our Flights tab. So I can do that by sending this over to my Flights tab. And now I can look at some of those integrated weight and balance tools that are available to Performance Plus subscribers. This tool allows me to do my weight and balance calculations directly from the Flights tab. To use this, I'll simply tap on these fields here, my people and cargo fields, and ForeFlight will automatically start doing my weight and balance calculations for me for this flight, using my performance, using my fuel estimates. All of that stuff will be integrated together. I'll start by adjusting my persons on board. I'll just go ahead and tap on that field. I can just estimate a number. Let's say I have 3 persons on board. That includes the pilot. That includes myself. I'll do the same with my cargo. I'll say I have 3 people, 120 pounds of cargo. And I can see that based on that, I have some sort of error. The integrated weight and balance tool for Performance Plus users, has told me that based on the profile I built, based on this loadout, there's some error. Something requires my attention. If you want to see what those errors are, you can go ahead and tap on the error banner at the top, and I can see that I'm over my max ramp weight, my max takeoff weight, and I need to make some sort of adjustment. So there's several different adjustments I can make. I can maybe take less fuel on board and maybe plan an en route fuel stop, or, and this is probably an easier solution to this problem, I'm going to go into my integrated weight and balance by tapping on that weight and balance icon there. I can see my center of gravity for takeoff is out of limits. Everything is dynamically represented here. So I can start to make some changes to see if I can get myself back within limits. Again, these could be changes to the route, changes to the payload. There's several different ways you can do this. For my example here, I know for a fact that the individuals I'm planning this flight for do not weigh 200 pounds each. So 200 pounds each is the default that ForeFlight uses. These defaults can be edited. You can adjust these as well. So I'm just going to go into each seat here. If I'm the pilot, I don't weigh 200 pounds. So I'm going to adjust that weight. And you'll see that on my example, my name has appeared here. That's because I have saved weights on my for my weight and balance information. So if you're flying with the same people all the time, it's probably a good idea just to save those weights so that you are getting an accurate calculation. So I weigh 158 pounds, more or less. I guess it depends on the time of day and stuff like that, but I'm more or less 158 pounds. So that's probably close enough for my planning. I have saved weights for my passengers as well, and I'll repeat that same process. I'll just open up that window, that pop-up. You can manually type in their weights, or if you've saved weights, you just scroll down and you'll see a list of saved weights. So I can see that I weigh 158, Susie weighs 125, and Ryan weighs 175. And even if they're not exact weights, as long as they're close enough, my planning should be okay. So that information right there, my warnings have already disappeared because if you recall, I was 107 pounds over my, I guess 108 pounds over my max takeoff weight, and I've already reduced 142 pounds just by changing these passenger weights. I could continue to make adjustments if I need to. The cargo value I included was 120 pounds. Maybe that was just a rough estimate. Maybe I had some time to actually weigh the cargo, and it's not actually 120 pounds. Not everyone's bringing 40 pounds of gear. I've lowered that number back to 85 pounds. Maybe that's what it actually represents. I'll scroll down in this field and I can see that now I'm back within limits. Everything is green. Green typically means good to go. I'm good to go based on my current loadout here. I can use that summary button if I want to. I can print this. I can print this weight and balance load summary. Because I'm a performance subscriber, I can save this to my flight files. So this will be attached to my flight. I can download this. As long as I don't delete the flight, this information will be stored on my device as well. So I don't need to print it. I don't need to download it. It will be there. Again, this is one of those things available to me as a Performance Plus subscriber. The last piece I'd like to cover before answering some questions and demonstrating some features is a preview of the new graphical weight and balance features available to Performance Plus customers. So Performance Plus users now have access to graphical weight and balance interface on the web and on ForeFlight Mobile. This has to be enabled on the web, though. So if you visit plan.foreflight.com, and then, like I mentioned at the very top, access your aircraft tab, you're going to do this from the weight and balance profile that's in the aircraft tab. So once you're there, so we're on the we're on the aircraft configuration page for my Foxtrot 789. This is my Archer 2. Once we're here, just open up any weight and balance profile you have. On the weight and balance configuration page, you'll see a pop-up describing the tool and the ability to enable the graphical weight and balance. Once I click enable, the very next step will ask me to verify the seating layout of my aircraft. Select one that most closely matches your aircraft. And then ForeFlight automatically populates the diagram at right with the station information that you entered or verified when you were setting up your weight and balance profile. So all of these stations, these do match these stations here. So for example, if I were to move my passenger arm from 118.1 to significantly farther back, these seats would graphically be represented as moving back. If I'd like to use this in my mobile planning, all I do is tap on Enable on Mobile. And then now you can plan your loadout using the graphical layout at left. And what I mean by plan, I can show this as a live demo if people like, but basically I'll tap on the plus sign, I'll add a load, I'll tap on an existing load, I'll delete it, I'll change those weights, and it's the same exact workflow that I walk through for flight planning as Performance Plus subscriber. It's just graphically depicted here. One final note on the graphical weight and balance, it does not do lateral weight and balance. This is only longitudinal weight and balance. So we won't calculate a difference between 205 pounds in the right seat or the left seat. We'll only calculate that loadout's impact on your center of gravity forward and aft, not left and right on the aircraft. So with that brings us to the remaining of our time for Q&A and any demonstrations you would like to see. So if you haven't put questions into the Q&A tool on Zoom, you'll have about 10 or 15 minutes to do that, and we'll jump right in. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for all the questions. We have some time to go through some. Basically, there was a lot of questions. There's a lot of people here. I'm not going to be able to answer all of them. What I would recommend is if you have a question specifically about your aircraft, your POH, your weight and balance profile, just email us at team@foreflight.com. You can attach PDFs of your POH if you'd like. You can attach screenshots of what you're looking at. And in that way, we'd be able to specifically answer your question. In the format we have here, we're kind of sort of taking our best guess about how to answer for your aircraft. So if you have specifics you need for your specific aircraft, please email us at team@foreflight.com. Keith, do you want to switch the screens and then I can walk through some examples on the iPad? Thank you. So you should all be seeing my iPad right now. There's a slight delay with how it's moving. There were a handful of questions that we got that were general enough that I can go over these. I can go over these right now. One of the ones I wanted to show was just to make sure you guys understood what I was talking about with how to access the weight and balance guide on ForeFlight Mobile. It's going to be in our Documents tab. It's going to be in the ForeFlight Drive. So at left, you can see my ForeFlight Drive is highlighted. You may have to scroll down a little bit, but you'll see the ForeFlight Weight and Balance Guide. I'm going to download that. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. Once this opens up, this is probably the simplest way to get started. Again, if you're going to be building stuff from scratch, this is a searchable document. And what I mean by that is I can just open up the table of contents. I can look at something specific. Maybe I want to look at weight and balance profiles. Let's do types of templates. And I can navigate directly there to my pre-built templates. You can also use the search if you're searching for something in specific. Let's try CG. We can see all the different CG matches, 90 different matches, and those will take us to that section of the PDF. So it's very easy to navigate. I would start here if you're trying to build out your own weight and balance profile. With that said, there was a couple questions people asked about specific aircraft. The simplest way to solve this on your own, you can email us again at team@foreflight.com, but the fastest way, honestly, is if we just go to our aircraft tab, and I'll go into add a new aircraft. Once I go into my aircraft type, this is a searchable field. You can scroll down to try to find the aircraft you're looking for. In this case, I just typed in the words Bonanza, and you can see all of the types we have here. Somebody asked about a specific one. Let's see if I can find it, if we have it. Okay, so we can see that for this specific aircraft, we have a Bonanza F33 and then a Bonanza F33A. One of these does have a weight and balance template available. The other one does not. I'm not familiar with this specific aircraft at how close these two are to one another, But if you find that we have a weight and balance template built for an aircraft that's similar to yours, you can start with that and not have to build that template from scratch. But if you see this text that says weight and balance template available, that means we have a weight and balance template available for that aircraft. So one of the things I wanted to show, we had several questions too about sharing and about custom weights for passengers and things like that. So this is my Skyhawk, my 172 I have saved here. You'll notice I have my two profiles. I have my rear seat, my 4-seat arrangement, and then my arrangement, the rear seats removed. There were some questions too about multiple configurations for the same aircraft. The simplest way to do that is just make multiple profiles for that aircraft. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these. And again, this is all stuff I went through when I was going through the main presentation here. Anything that you'd like to be included in that aircraft's basic operational weight, I went through that in my in the presentation. But just to make sure that's clear, you can tap on any station and they'll have this include in basic operational weight toggle, and you can set what that weight is. So anytime ForeFlight calculates your weight and balance, we'll automatically add that amount. So if you're always traveling with 50 pounds of cargo in our cargo tail compartment, you can just make sure that's always included so you don't have to actually go in and calculate that every time. So if I'm doing this on mobile like I am right now, and I'd like to save, maybe I'm I'm renting from a flying club or something that has 6 different aircraft that are all the same type, but I want to make sure I have an accurate weight and balance profile for each one. You can just copy this profile. Once you copy the profile, you'll select another tail number to add this to. You can select, basically what I would do is I would make, let's say, Foxtrot 172A, Foxtrot 172 Bravo, Foxtrot 172 Charlie, and just copy that profile over and over again. For each one, I would be prompted to enter in the empty CG and the basic empty weight, but that's the simplest way to go about copying that. Before I leave my iPad here, I want to talk about the passenger weights, and I'm going to do this from my weight and balance tab, but this can be done if you're performance subscriber and you have the integrated weight and balance. The workflow is the same way. So here you can look at the very top entry where it says pilot. You can see it says my name, 158 pounds. For any of these other loadouts here, I'll just go ahead and tap on passenger, and you can see I can add in a weight. If I scroll down, actually, let me enter in a weight first. Let me do this as 165 pounds. And whoops, I'm sorry, I messed that up. Let me pretend I didn't do any of that. I'm going to do 165 pounds. Once I enter in a custom description, shoot, I'm going to have to clear this. Let me start this over. Apologies for messing up. Okay, let me do this again. So I'm going to enter in 165. Once I enter in a description, I'm going to make this passenger 57 in honor of Wesley Snipes. So we have passenger 57. That is now a saved load. And anytime I'm planning with this flight, I can just go back through and pick that one from the list. So I'll see that. I should see that one down here now as well. Probably, oh yeah, there it is, passenger 57. So this is how you can save loads. You can do this from the integrated, you can do this from the integrated weight and balance on the flights tab, or you can do this from that weight and balance, the weight and balance tab here. I don't remember, honestly, if I went over this, but if you need to, yes, I did. If you need to print that weight and balance load summary, there's a question about the regulatory need to print any of this. There's no regulatory need to print this per se, as long as you've completed and briefed the weight and balance load summary, but some of you may be required to do it based on who you're operating the aircraft with. This is where you would print that at. So going back to my aircraft, and I'm going to open up my weight and balance summary again. I'll just keep this. Actually, let's use this one. I'll use my PA 46 here. So I'll scroll down to my weight and balance here. I have my 6-seat club arrangement. I'll go ahead and open that up. There's a question about sharing these. In all honesty, I find this easier to do on the web than it is on mobile, but the workflow is basically the same. I'm going to go ahead and tap on my send to icon, and you'll see my options here about where I can share this to. You can send this via email, you can save this to files, however, whatever workflow makes sense to you. I'm going to airdrop this over to my MacBook. And what we'll see is you should, if Keith, can you change over to my shared screen? And I hold one moment. I'm having trouble seeing what's being displayed. Okay, there we go. That should good. All right, so this is what popped up on my on the website when I shared this with myself. I'm sharing an aircraft that doesn't exist, so that's why this field is blank. This is shared with an account that doesn't have this aircraft, so I'll just make this PFF PA46 Alpha. There's no matching options. That will. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have to have an aircraft to share this with, so I'd have to assign it. But this is how that sharing works. You'll see on the web here, I have the option to copy a profile. I'm actually going to close this, and I'll open up an existing one to make this a little easier to see what I'm trying to do. This is my aircraft tab. There was a question that popped up about on the web. There is no weight and balance tab. On my aircraft tab, I'll just scroll down. This is where my weight and balance profiles are. You'll see I have the options to share, copy, and edit, or delete any of those profiles. Again, if I copy it, I'm going to copy it to an existing tail that I've already created. Share just allows me to share this with another user. Again, I can just copy and paste that URL. When they open it up, they'll be able to work on that. If I do edit with graphical weight and balance, I had mentioned this is something that's only available to Performance Plus users. This has to be enabled on the web. To enable that, we'll go ahead and just click on enable. I'll get my little pop-up telling me how this works. And then I have one farther option to enable this on the mobile side. And I did not select an aisle. Let me do that. There we go. So this is basically what the graphical weight and balance looks like. This is different than the graphical CG envelopes. Just be aware, these are two different things. The graphical weight and balance envelope is just intended to kind of make it easier on mobile to add and remove those individual weights. So with that, again, I know there were several questions we weren't able to answer. Generally speaking, if you have a question that's specific to your aircraft about how do you enter in fore and aft limits, maybe your POH is lacking that information, please contact us at team@foreflight.com. We may ask you to send us some images, some PDFs of your POH, or whatever other information you have. I want to thank everyone for joining us and enjoy flying with ForeFlight.